Good evening, everyone. Tonight I'm going to be talking about my annotations that I made on two discussion posts, one now comment, and my presentation for my final Educator inquiry project. If you see me looking around, I have a notebook to make sure I cover everything, as well as a screen right here in front of me, just to pinpoint the topics that I want to talk about in all of my annotations and how my understanding of participatory culture has evolved from the beginning, middle, to end of the semester. So I'm just going to dive right in for the sake of time. For my first annotation, I used discussion post from week 2, but this is technically discussion post number 1. The reason why I chose this discussion post to talk about is because I feel like it really highlighted the beginning stages of me understanding what is participatory culture and how is it used in the classroom. And to go ahead and address some themes that you will hear from me that I identified throughout this semester, I'm going to reinstate it as I go into each component of my annotations, but just to go ahead and tell you, I've noticed that participatory culture invites us to collaborate and use digital spaces as a way to connect with our classroom community, school community, local community, nationwide and worldwide communities to build upon our understanding of the world and how we can build an independent voice to become individual democratic citizens. Further, we can extend this to engaging with societal and ethical issues in order to build a positive change. And the continuous part of this is to band together. You know, one of the key word that I kept thinking of when I heard participatory culture throughout the semester was participation. And to me, this means beyond just participating in a classroom assignment. This means being active in our voice with digital media, such as social media, and also being active within our world. And I'll go into that. I'm going to leave that vague until I kind of talk about it a little bit more. But for my first discussion post, this article that I used, Dr. Johnson, if you're looking at this live as I'm reading it, this will be posted to YouTube. The left side of these slides are not the annotations that I made for this, but the right side is, and this is because this format of this discussion post was submitted as a PowerPoint presentation where I screenshotted my own notes and put it side by side to the commentary that I made for the discussion. But for this part, I will be talking about annotations I made, finding that I talked about differentiation, different learning styles, the American culture melting pot, and a bit on AI spaces, going into that collaboration, and considering it in the form of social media. So firstly, differentiation, we understand at this point, being in the program, differentiation is a huge part of our lesson planning process and implementation of the lesson plans. This goes beyond having a 504 IEP, being an ELL student, being on a different grade level, whether it be above or below, honors, AP, IB, you name it, completely different. I'm so sorry, it completely varies, but participatory culture takes it to another level. This asks us to not specifically look at these components, consider them, but also branch out and really consider the different learning styles that are present in the classroom and how we can use it as a tool to enhance the learning in the classroom in our strategies as educators. So with learning styles, as we know, there are audio, visual, kinesthetic, reading, and writing. And there are a variety of sources on the wide web that can elevate our lessons, such as videos, web articles, interactive websites. I love using that in my lessons. It's really cool to see the students interact with too. Making infographics or blogs or interacting on a school newspaper, love Canva. That's another one we really like to use in my classroom just because it has some cool templates and it really gets them engaged with the content. But by using these sources, extend it more into collaborating with peers. When you're creating content or learning from content with this, ask them to dialogue or question with the partner, but also use the opportunity of using these multiple learning styles to collaborate with their peers. So if they're creating a podcast, for example, as a reaction to the text that we just read in class, ask them to work with a partner so they can share their different perspectives on this. And again, another theme of participatory culture is learning from diverse perspectives and gaining that knowledge to improve our problem solving and critical thinking skills. Another thing that was highlighted in my annotations of my own discussion post was how I acknowledge that there is an American melting pot culture. And like I said before, this does extend beyond ELL instruction, but you have to remember this is my first ever discussion post. This is the beginning stages of me understanding what this concept is. So give me a little grace for a moment, but I did still think this was important enough to highlight not only my growth, but really talk about it's around the globe. You're going to have people of various backgrounds, various opinions and thoughts and rationales. And being able to share that, especially on a social media platform, we get to not only hear those ideas, but we can think and compare it to ourselves. And quite frankly, the issues such as overseas with Pakistan and Israel, students see that on social media. And they want to be a part of that voice. They want to participate and create a video, post something with a hashtag, you name it. They want to participate in that, and realizing that it's not only in other countries, but in our country too. I think that's an important concept to bring into our classroom and really ask our students to really think about and share with each other in the classroom so we can have a more well-rounded experience in the classroom environment of how are we going to learn and share our ideas together. So I move on to really go more into that collaborative idea and why I think this is important. Collaboration has always been a key factor in my lesson plans. I firmly believe we can learn from everybody in the classroom. This goes beyond just what I know. Even though I'm the professional in this space, I'm not professional in your life and your experiences. I'm a professional in English education. So with speaking on, like, maybe we're reading a text that takes place in a different setting from what the environment is used to. So this could even be, I'm teaching in a rural county, but the story takes place in an urban environment. So it's not just thinking about maybe the story takes place in England or something, or Canada, or wherever you want it to be for this example. But collaborative spaces really ask us to think about, particularly in this instance, the physical and digital world and how it encompasses our daily lives. Then how can we apply this to our teaching practices by asking them to create these products on social media, using this in a blog post, making a podcast or YouTube video reaction. And this is really to start bridging together ideas in an open, safe environment to where they're able to talk about this and they're able to integrate these concepts into their daily lives and really start to, so when they go home, they'll think, man, I did that too in class. That's starting to make a little bit more sense. And I just really do want to emphasize about social media. I know there's a lot of hate with social media being in the classroom, and I will admit I was one of those people too before this class. I was a big, like, do not get on your phone. Do not let me catch you being on social media. Please, I need you to focus. Like, you have no idea how much I care about you. But now I'm wondering even more to this day of like, okay, well, what can I do now? Like, is there a Facebook group out there for this? Is there Can we make an Instagram post? Do we have a school account that we can post and we can interact with? Are we able to create something to post? And that's important because they already know how to use that. So you're not worrying about having to teach a concept of how to do something and use something. Rather, you are engaging them with prior knowledge in a space where they can continue to use a digital space. So moving on to my second discussion post, I pulled this one from week 3. Now we're starting to see some more growth in my knowledge and my understanding of this concept. And now my second theme really is brought into light with talking about societal and ethical issues. For this week's discussion post, this was a rotating Canvas discussion post, and I chose to do questions for this week. So now I have an opportunity to go back and answer these questions. So it was very interesting to see like how and I remember thinking what my responses may have been, but now they're quite, I wouldn't say like terribly different, but they are a little bit different. But my first question was, how might we engage our students in meaningful discussions and participation on societal issues or ethics, including but not limited to the Black Lives Matter movement? So my response now is that we can include our students in whole class discussions on societal issues. And like, I think Black Lives Matter is a great thing to talk about in school. This is a prevalent issue. It's current. Students can engage with this so they can have a better understanding of it. So whereas, and during these conversations, they're sharing their prior and current understandings of what the movement is about and what is its purpose. Why is this a movement and why does it matter? And we'll start to pinpoint these ideas and start getting the gears turning in their head to start thinking about it. And then as the questioning phase kind of tends to fade, now we're getting into more the meat of the discussions where we can start using videos and articles and listening to other people's actual experiences. So now we're having this scaffolding of like, okay, so this is what they're talking about. Okay, where have I seen this? Where might I have been exposed to something like this? And really start to thinking about the whys and the hows. And then we can take this into more about how this specifically might impact their daily lives, no matter the race. Like, what might have you experienced? You may not be Black, but you could be white. You could be any culture, ethical heritage. That's the word I was looking for. You can be of any race and experience some kind of experience with oppression, specifically with our minorities. And our minorities have a voice, and they need to be listened to too. They're just as valuable and knowledgeable as anybody else in the classroom. So having that space in the classroom to really talk about it too is, I think, essential to their growth and their learning, to feel heard and also understand that their voice is very, very powerful. And it kind of bridges into my second question with how, as ELA teachers exploring this and writing instruction specifically, how can we incorporate these journalistic perspectives that do limit harassment? I must include that. But how can we talk about this ethical issues? So some of the activities that I like talking about is using a Facebook group. I have used this in like a mock lesson plan, but I really want to try to do this in a future lesson plan where we create a Facebook group. And this could be just like a school Facebook group. Maybe we can get some leverage with the community. It would all have to depend on who approves it, who is approved to be in the group, and so on and so forth. But I would like to engage my students in a journalistic post where they make a post about whether it be their experiences with oppression, where may have they witnessed someone else being oppressed, where might we have resources, and just having the students talk about what they have seen, felt, heard, thoughts, opinions. And then they would comment on each other's posts. And you don't have to just write. You can write and write your reactions, but you also do GIFs or GIFs, however you pronounce it. Or maybe link like, oh hey, I saw this on Instagram. Look at this, click on it. Or maybe it's a screenshot of ChatGPT and what it thinks. Sorry, it's getting into the later part of it. I just want to throw that out there. But the goal of this specific activity is to also engage this variety of perspectives. Look at that. The theme's starting to come back up. Social media, and this one's a free one to use. Most social media does not involve spending any money. So this is a free way to engage students in the community and with these issues. So my last question was, what were the potential risks of our generation's over-reliance on social media and technology use? And specifically, how might this impact the achieving of the Black Lives Matter movement? And this, I really went back and really thought about, so we can spread misinformation quite rapidly. And that's the last thing we want when we're trying to fight an issue such as this. And I apologize, my phone fell. There it goes. So here, let me just a little bit. Okay, there we go. So with misinformation being spread, it is rapid on a digital space. This is more rapid than just word to word or mouth to mouth, ear to ear, however the saying goes. And we don't want to create these, what I call echo chambers. So this is when something gets said that's inaccurate, or maybe you're just repeating something that may be true over and over again, and all we're getting is the same response over and over again. Misinformation just be spread over and over again. There is no progress. There isn't any change. And this doesn't solve any issues. So this is something that I would really like to emphasize to my students to really consider is, what is the purpose of the post? How can it be purposeful? And then from there, how can we collaborate with others to also help them not only get in this headspace of thinking about it, but also how can we provide meaning and power in the voices that we collaborate with in media. As always, with issues such as this, we are looking for positive forward change with accurate research, accurate pushing of information. We want to make progress, and progress is not going to be accomplished if misinformation or harassment is being implemented. So that concludes my discussion post, but now I'm on to my now comment annotation this is from week 9. Oh, I apologize. Once again, I left out a quote that I would like to really reference in this instance. So before I get into the now comment, I went back in and I found this in the Why Youth Uses Social Network Sites, the role of, I'm so sorry. I will attach this in the link below. I apologize. My handwriting is terrible. So for this one, I'll put 2 asterisks, and in the description box, I will make sure that I reference. This was my further connection reading for my discussion post to connection to the reading for my annotations for this part. But the quote says, the types of publics that gather on social network sites and the types of publics such as sites supported are deeply affected by the mediated nature of interaction. For these reasons, it is important to distinguish these sites as publics, not simply public, and network publics, not simply publics. And I thought this was a lot of publics put in here, but usually we think of public, we think of like, oh, everybody can see the account. Yeah, that's a start, but the point of this article and how it helped me understand this information, especially now reviewing and going back and really thinking about what I had originally posted, is think about the word republic. We are in a democracy. We should be working together to make decisions, and we should be working together to collaborate. And using social media in such a technological era, this is a awesome time to connect with other people and be able to share these ideas of how to create positive change. Well, this happened. This is a horrible thing that happened. So what are we going to do about it? Like, what do you think is the appropriate action to take from here in a respectful, responsible manner? How can we spread awareness to youth to prevent this from happening again? And so with these spaces and having your audience, and this is paraphrasing from this same section, the spaces and audiences that are bound together through technological networks such as the internet, mobile networks, etc., are one type of a mediated public. The network mediates the interactions between members of the public. So, and how I interpreted this, and I know it's probably not how they're, not quite how they intended it to be interpreted, was what we do online, we do in our own lives. What we put out to others on the social media, it affects them mentally and physically. So when we are sharing this, we need to make sure we are aware of the public space that we are interacting with. So now I will move into, I'm sorry, I'm having to adjust. Sorry, I have like a phone holder right there. Okay, so the next part is my now comment annotation. And in this annotation, in this section, we were talking about thin versus thick descriptors, or thin and thick descriptors. And I will be honest, when I did this, I was still a little wavy about my understanding of this concept after doing the annotation. So I went back and I reviewed it and I reread the reading. And I was like, oh, that makes so much more sense because I've had an opportunity now to build upon my understanding. And so I really understand now that thin and thick descriptors, it invites us as educators to really consider the acknowledgments and limitations of how we should be adjusting our own practices to meet the ethical and inclusive needs. And as I've said multiple times already, because it's a major theme, we have a diversity of students in our classroom, which should be celebrated. Is it going to have limitations? Maybe. But how can we overcome that? Because it's really important to provide equal and equitable education. It's just beyond numbers on a data screen. So we as teachers also need to continuously research and see how society changes over time and continues to change, because it's not going to be the same 10 to 20 years down the line. So we need to see how our society reacts to certain concepts, ideologies, what cultural or what cultures are present in our classroom, what about locally, what about our opinions on social media, how do people in our local community use social media or digital spaces, how do we feel about collaboration, and that varies. I remember being told, I have a friend who grew up in China, and she told me that the classroom system is very different, and talking about how, there's not really a lot of collaboration. It's just more teacher-led. It is teacher-centered. And over here in America, if you went to school in America, you would know that we don't get a lot of teacher-centered instruction. We get very student-centered instruction, and this is a concept that's still growing. So I think it's also important to understand how different cultures collaborate with one another, but also do the research and show hey, psychology does kind of say we're seeing, there's an increased funds of knowledge whenever we collaborate with other people and gain each other's different ideas. So I thought that was really important to highlight in that section. And then finally, this is my favorite part of the presentation, so I will try to keep it limited, is my presentation, and I'm very excited to share this with you. I have been doing a ton of research on ChatGPT and how it is going to be such a already valuable, but continue to be a valuable tool in our classroom, especially for educators, and how we can create assignments and activities and have our students collaborate, engage with it. So firstly, ChatGPT, as seen in my annotations for this, is it's a human-like platform where when you talk to it, it talks back to you like it's your friend, and it doesn't give you all this jargon. And you can ask it too, like, hey, can you please, and I've asked it for, can you please dumb that down for me so I can understand it better. But in my presentation, I first went from what is ChatGPT, showing that, hey, it's got all these cool accessibility features such as text-to-speech, alternate text, text summarization, multilingual support, customization, and integrative assistive technology. Sorry, I had to list those for you so you can hear what they are firsthand. So I really do believe we need to look at this more as a concept in participatory culture, because there are so many opportunities to collaborate with one another and also be pushed to use other digital spaces. So for example, an activity I love using with my students is asking them, especially when we're doing longer writing assignments, is it'll go like this. Student A writes the 2 paragraphs, let's say, while student B is also writing 2 paragraphs. They swap. And then they highlight it up, they mark up the text, and they take a picture of it on their school iPad, and they upload it to ChatGPT, and they ask it different questions, such as for feedback. They ask it for any suggestions, how might this connect to real world issues, so on and so forth. But another one that's kind of like a jam of this one is students will work together to write a story, and then they'll ask ChatGPT to work with them. So they'll do it either student A writes 2 sentences and student B writes 2 sentences and ChatGPT writes 2 sentences. And you can ask it, like, I cannot stress enough, like, it's boundless. Ask it anything you want. You can ask it the weather, how to make spaghetti. All right, explain to me E equals MC squared. What the heck is a metaphor? You can ask it anything you want. And I think we need to slow down on the fear of ChatGPT and start embracing it in our classroom. Because even for teachers, we can use this, as also shown in my annotations on my presentation, there's a variety of ways we can use this tool. Such as not only lesson planning, organization, time management, but activities. And we can ask it to can you please find me an interactive activity for something during the Salem witch trials, because I'm teaching them The Crucible by Arthur Miller. I use that. I've used that example, that text example before. But anyway, I'll get a little bit more into how the specific things with what teachers can use for it in the classroom. And actually right now, sorry, that's the next component. So I'll start by sharing another example that I used. I had students read The Partner's Tale by Geoffrey Chaucer, and they had to write their own Plague's Tale. But part of my lesson planning process was I wanted something interactive. I wanted a digital tool to really use in the classroom. And I asked ChatGPT, I exhausted my own search engine. So I went to ChatGPT and I said, I need a interactive activity or interactive website for my students to engage with something involving the medieval plague. Split second, it pulled it up. It was a cool activity. It walked them through it, seeing if they were going to survive. It had a writing activity at the end. Beautiful. It was such a cool tool. And at the end, I got to ask my students, not only how did they like it, but how do you think that the issues they face in the plague affects us today? And not just sickness, but how do we interact around people, especially now being in a post-COVID era. That was a cool concept to talk to them about. But it's really interesting to read the article and then really put together this presentation to really find out specific components of how it's going to be beneficial. Like I've mentioned before with teachers, we get into looking at, it'll help you write assessments. It can help you give feedback or give you feedback on your instruction. It can help you create the lesson plans, learning objectives, activities, materials. You can ask it to put in specific themes, but with the students, you're helping them brainstorm. You're helping them write prompts or give them an outline. Explain this concept to me. My teacher couldn't explain it to me. Can you? Kind of deal. So hopefully I'm not among that crowd with my students, and then students can also interact with the AI and critiquing it and saying, well, AI said this, but I think differently. Well, how so? Think, pair, share. Something like that. And I haven't written out a lesson plan for something specific like that, but it would be very interesting to include. But specifically with the article really demonstrated 19 ways you can incorporate ChatGPT into your classrooms, and I broke it down into supporting writing skills, efficient lesson planning, enhancing math understanding, and preparing students for future workforce. I did not include the math understanding in my annotation, as I am an ELA will be an ELA teacher that's currently in student teaching or internship or pre-internship. There we go. But I really think that participatory culture can connect all the ideas, especially for writing skills. Especially not only if it's online brainstorming, but it'll help you find resources to include. It can combine stories. I've seen it to where a student writes a sample, another student writes a sample, it combines it into a story, and it's really cool to see. And I've seen it take a story and then ask it, well, how can I make this more related to, we'll use the Black Lives Matter movement again, to the Black Lives Matter. And it'll help you reframe it, and it'll give you suggestions, and it'll ask you like, well, does this work? What else do you want to include? It is begging for you to use it. I also like plugging in collaborative Google Docs in it to where peers can edit again and then edit alongside ChatGPT. You just use a link feature. There's like a link button. You click it, you put the link in, and boom, it reads it and it accesses it. You just got to make sure you give it viewer permission. But this is just such a wonderful tool. I cannot brag on it enough. I used to be a hater on ChatGPT. I hated it and I feared it. I was like, oh my goodness, there's just gonna be so many problems. And now I'm on the complete opposite end of being like, wow, this is great. This is the best collaborative, diverse source I could possibly find on the web. And I'm excited to see how it goes in the future. I did also attach a further reading at the very bottom of my annotations and will also be in the description box below. But there is an additional 5 more ways you can include ChatGPT into your classroom if you were curious, Dr. Johnson. But the one thing I do have questions about that still remain is I understand that every state and school system has different limitations for digital platforms. I came from a school system where we had a computer lab, and that was it. And my mom still works there, and I asked her, well, do you guys get iPads, Chromebooks, school computers? And she says, nope, we got a computer lab. So like, how would I combat that when I want to use a digital space for collaboration? And I know I can honestly like work around it with like just using more of a collaboration aspect, sharing ideas, but I really like how this course really talked about digital spaces, and that's something I want to be more attuned with. So how might I still put all the elements of participatory culture into a classroom environment that does not have the resources to do so? Like, how might I find a loophole, I suppose? But overall, as you can see throughout my continuation of me explaining what post I chose to talk about, I really walked into this thinking this was like an ESL course and just thinking we're going to be talking about different cultures. And I also thought, oh, well, of course we should be using digital tools, but I didn't understand how and its importance. Like, what does this look like? And by the end, it was, I was just automatically constantly spitfiring ideas when I was writing them for practicum, of always thinking about, well, how can I incorporate these elements? This needs to be a part of my lesson planning progress. I'm seeing the benefits. I'm seeing these case studies. I'm seeing other people talk about in their classroom with their peers, which was another concept I really enjoyed being a part of, was reading other people's comments, because I, with the permission, stole their ideas and implemented into my own classroom because they said it worked out so well. And that's a beautiful thing about being able to collaborate with your peers. There we go. Participatory culture in a participatory culture class. But now I'm walking away with an understanding more so that it's important to really include student-centered thinking more in the broad text of modernizing our instruction. And I think that is the biggest takeaway for me with participatory culture, is just it feels so modern and it's really refreshing. So all in all, Dr. Johnson, thank you so much for a wonderful semester. I cannot thank you enough. And I just know my future in classroom is going to be very improved with my own ideologies and practice I have now in practicum to become a better prepared incoming teacher. So thank you so much for listening. Sorry it was such a long video, but have a good semester, or end of the semester.